He has been subpoenaed and is due to testify early next year about his role in the multi-billion rand arms procurement deal. This comes after the withdrawal of his lawyer pending confirmation of legal assistance from government for Thabo Mbeki and other cabinet ministers. Now, among the big names set to testify during the first phase of the arms deal saga are Patricia de Lille, Terry Crawford Brown, Monsieur Lekota, Ronnie Crussels, Trevor Manuel and Andrew Feinstein. Now, the second phase of the commission is set to start on January 31st, 2014, where the evidence will be led by the critics of the arms deal. Now, the arms deal commission has been widely criticized by the media and the public. Now, it's slow progress. Let us now get into the discussion. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me once again. You are back by popular demand. Welcome, Ralph and David.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Alicia.
All right, gentlemen, let's get into the arms deal. Let's look at how this issue started. Ralph, take us through.
Well, this came out of, I would say one of the biggest scandal or potential scandal in the post-apartheid South Africa, the biggest expenditure of arms procurement, which has raised concern. We know that the earlier installment that has resulted it's some of submissions made by Patricia de Lille that there has been impropriety in the decision to procure arms and bribery has been paid. The story has been going on and on to an extent where there was actually a court petition where the president was almost compelled to appoint a commission. We know the arms activist Terry Crawford Brown has been behind the legal wrangle, trying to get the wider inquiry into the entire saga. And finally, the president had announced the commission. We have the commission in place. The commission had already started. In the last few days that the commission had started, actually, they've been looking at the rationale for buying those arms. We have seen one of the military brass, Rear Admiral Hicks, who came and accounted as to why South Africa needs that protection and state security. And they're also going to look at how
that it's very expensive to run the army.
Exactly, it's quite expensive because that came as they were questioned, the military officials were being questioned on whether the arms, the hardware that has been bought, are they being utilized? And there are mixed reports thereof. There is an indication that it's quite expensive to run some of the frigates, to keep them in the sea and all that. But I think we'll be looking much, this is just the beginning. There will be much more intense questioning as the commission goes ahead. At this point, though, it's just still looking at the novelty of having arms and the reason why we did that and whether we are using those arms at this point.
Now, David, what is your take on how the arms deal has been actually covered in terms of media coverage?
Well, this is a story that's been going on for a long time, and there was a bit of a hiatus in dealing with the story, and it's back with a bang. Bang is probably not the right word to use with arms deal, but I think the interesting thing about this week's coverage, whether it be on TV, radio, and the newspapers, is it's focused on mainly what, as Ralph said, what the senior members of the Navy have had to say, and sort of asking people in the military whether or not our spending on military equipment is a good thing, and whether enough has been spent is kind of like asking a little kid in a sweet shop if she should be able to buy more sweets. Of course, the answer is going to be yes. And one of the things I think has been missing this week, but did come up in previous coverage of the arms deal months ago, is why does South Africa need all this equipment? Is South Africa under threat by any of its neighbors, anybody in the region? And I think the simple answer is no. And that's one of a number of things that have been missing in the coverage.
All right, now, Ralph, let's talk about the credibility of the commission, especially after the resignation of the key members.
At this point, I think they're trying, the commission is working very hard to maintain that sense of credibility. There's been resignation, and the president has made a decision that the commission will go ahead with 2 people heading the commission. They are not going to appoint the 3rd person to replace the person who resigned. But I think a lot will depend on what's going to come out. There are reports indicating that the evidence that is going to be led when it comes to how South Africa utilized those equipment, it might be held it might be led in camera. It might not be exposed to the public. The reason being that you can't go on public and say that we have only been able to have our frigates in the sea 7 hours. That they will say compromise national security. But something very important that David is saying, that I think is quite critical is that when you ask anyone in the military, why do we have arms? Their standard response is that you do not shut down the military because there is no war. There is always this anticipation that you need to always protect yourself. I find that evidence it will only convince people in the military, because as civilians, we see it's peacetime. Why do you have to spend so much on arms? The military will say that we are anticipating, or maybe we want to be in a position where we can deter any possible threat. I don't know if that's going to hold in my view.
All right, now we've got Khulwane from Zimbabwe online. Khulwane, welcome to Media Monitor. Now, give us your take on the Arms Deal Commission and how it's been covered in South Africa and maybe in Zim. It's very interesting that Zimbabwe is right next to us and you're probably looking at the Arms Commission.
Thank you very much. To be honest, the arms deal hasn't made much news this side. Maybe it's because of our ongoing big stories about the elections and the swearing in of the president. So the South African story hasn't been much of in the news in Zimbabwe.
All right. Okay. Now I struggle to hear. I think we're gonna fix the volume there. Now, David, give us your take on the credibility. Now, this story, especially after former President Thabo Mbeki's lawyer resigned, there was a big thing about that. And why did he resign, especially at such a critical stage of the commission?
Well, I think one of the things we've missed in our discussion thus far is it's not just about buying arms, whether South Africa needs submarines or it needs Gripen air fighters, that sort of thing. It's about where the money has gone. It's about corruption. It's one of South Africa's first big corruption stories in the post-democracy area. Sorry, not post-apartheid era. And talking about credibility, the fact that it's taking so long, the fact that there are allegedly container loads of documents sitting, waiting for the people involved in the commission to go through, that may take years, if not decades, to go through, is an indication that the government doesn't seem to be too keen on moving this through too quickly. And the media has speculated to a very large degree as to why that is the case. There's an election coming up next year. It's not in the president's interest for things to look bad regarding his government. What's going to be most interesting, I think, about this commission, and tell me if you agree with this, Ralph, is when former cabinet ministers, notably Ronnie Kasrils and Masula Kota, appeared before the commission, because they've had a bit of notably Ronnie Kasrils has had a bit of a change of heart regarding his thoughts on corruption in the current government.
Certainly. At this point, the story now, the first leg of the commission, what we have had in the past few days, is just the word of military officials who are just giving broader justification why we need that. It's going to get more interesting, as you are saying, when you get to the second leg, where the critiques of the procurement, those who have been critical of that, the likes of Terry Crawford Brown, the likes of Patricia de Lille, are going to come in. It is at that point that I think they will be looking at the substantive claims of corruption in the entire process. At this point, it's about national security. There won't be much of disagreement on that, because it is very clear there is a need for national security. As to whether we need to spend much on that, it's another question. We can't resolve that. But when we get to deal with the substance of that, a lot is going to come out.
But a lot of people also forget that South Africa is an ally to other countries. We just sent our troops to the Central African Republic. So the military is just not there just to be, decorating. It's actually being used to aid other countries that are in need.
No, sure. South Africa is a leader in peacekeeping in Africa, and the DRC is just one of the more recent examples. Not only a few days ago, the AU announced that it was sending an extended peacekeeping mission into the Central African Republic. I think we can be quite certain that South Africa is very likely to be an important part of that mission. So yes, I would certainly not sit here and say that the South African military should not have new equipment. But we mustn't be blinded by the fact that the whole arms deal question is not just about the procurement of certain types of equipment, but how that equipment was procured and where the money went.
All right, we'll have that and more when we come back. Do stay with us. And remember, you can contact us on 011 714 6847 or +27 714 6847. If you are out of South Africa, we'll take your calls after the break. Do stay with us.
news on SABC. We bring you news in your own language. News that affect you. Sports. We have
Catherine Drew, SABC News at the High Court in London.
Shervin Bryce's SABC News.
Sarah Kimani, SABC News, Nairobi.
We touch and change people's lives. SABC News, Africa's news leader. Get all the latest news from the SABC's online news services on our website. Breaking news and in-depth coverage of everything from business, sports to politics and lifestyle. Catch the top news clips and watch live streaming of major news events on the SABC News YouTube channel whenever. Stay connected on the SABC News Facebook page and have your say on news that matters to you. And for the latest headlines and live updates from our reporters, follow us on Twitter. SABC Digital News, anytime, anywhere.
With so many bad incidents happening around us, we continue sourcing, unpacking and televising nation-building and compassionate stories. From the nation's pride, those who go all out, top achievers, hard workers, those dedicated to making this country a better place, and unusual friendships. Catch all these and more on SABC News.
You're watching SABC News. I'm Laurette Morgan, and you can join me every weekday between 10 and 12:30 for AM News.
I am excited for the first time. I'm not only going to wait for 7 o'clock news or 6 o'clock news.
For all the latest breaking local and international news, come and unpack the news day with me every weekday at 10.
Welcome back. You're still watching Media Monitor, and right now we cross over to our studio in Durban, where we are joined by Dr. Showers Mawawa, a political economist from the University of KwaZulu-Natal. We also have Kolwani Nyati, editor of Southern Eye in Bulawayo, Zimbabwe, on the phone, and we'll be talking to him much later on. Now, Dr. Showers, thank you so much for your time. What can you tell us about the arms deal?
Thank you. Good morning to you, and good morning to your viewers. I think that for a long time it has been an elephant in the room in South African politics. And I think fellow panelists have raised some critical questions. And I think for me, one has to look at it from different dimensions. The first one is perhaps, and most importantly at a political level, what it means. And I think the timing that the Commission is just getting started after long delays, the resignation of commissioners, and questions of credibility being raised. And I think these questions will continue to be raised, but I think that at a political level, it's going to drag on, and the public will for a long time be kept guessing as to what really happened. And I think it will buy time in the context of the coming elections in 2014. So on one hand, it may sound politically credible that the commission has finally been constituted and that the inquiry has begun. And that sort of answers critics that yes, finally the commission is there. But I think in terms of the real output and the questions that are being raised, it's going to take us some time, and it's likely to go on and on. There will be questions around what is admissible to the commission and what is not, issues of national security, on what kind of evidence that can be admissible. So it's just the beginning of a long process, which is politically correct in terms of perhaps public opinion. But I think the devil will be in the detail in terms of how we move forward.
And then, Doctor, what do you think in terms of the credibility? You've just spoken about how there's a lot of issues and questions raised around the fact that key figures have resigned from the commission at a very, very crucial stage. What is your take on that? Do you think people are still going to expect the same outcome as if, you know, the commission had gone on with the original team?
I think to some extent it's up to the chair of commission, and we have seen, at least in word, attempts to answer those questions of credibility. But I think even in terms of it being a two-man commission, I think it's going to be very, very, very difficult to restore public credibility in this commission. I think, like I said, the perception would be to say, yes, at least a commission has started, but I think that it will be very difficult to have credibility. Perhaps the outcome is what maybe might ultimately tell whether it's credible or not. But in terms of the process itself, it's going to be very difficult.
Thank you, Dr. Shahs. We'll be back with you now. Gentlemen, he raises a very serious issue here. And I think restoring public credibility in this, Ralph, I mean, a two-man commission, this is a very, very big issue. Do you think that the public are really going to believe the outcome of the commission?
Well, one thing that I've noticed observing different commissions in South Africa is that at the beginning, criticisms are very high. And when it comes to this one, criticisms are quite intense about credibility, resignation of the third member. But I think that there is still an opportunity for the commission to restore that sense of credibility, depending on how evidence is going to be led. If you look at an example of the President Thabo Mbeki's withdrawal, his reason is that he's been provided with a state attorney as a form of legal representative. Yes. What he wants is to bring in his own legal representative. He's also raising the question of credibility there because he's actually insinuating that the state attorney is disingenuous and therefore does not believe that he will get a proper representation through that kind of a channel. For the commission to restore credibility, they have to take such kind of things seriously and perhaps maybe give people the legal representative that people prefer and pay for those legal representatives, because the more you continue dismissing this kind of concerns that witnesses are having, it will damage the credibility. But I believe there is an opportunity for the commission to get it right and restore its credibility.